Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the Sunday show for the Hoosier State without all the bad faith BS, both sides argument, MAGA gaslighting, and false equivalency. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I'm recording from Bloomington, and I, as you can see, am ready for some football. Real quick before we get to the show and we welcome in our guests for this week, a couple housekeeping items. Do be sure to like and subscribe to this video. If you're watching on YouTube, click the bell, get notifications whenever Project Next drops new content. Also, be sure to subscribe on the social medias, follow along at Project Next Movement. Or at Project Next Indiana, depending on the platform. As for me, you can find old Scott here online at HoosLeft.us or at HoosLeft on most of the social media platforms. That concludes the shameless pitch promotion of today's introduction. Let me welcome in our guests. Looks like somebody else is ready for some football. That is Derrick Holder. Derrick,
Hello.
you were wearing a Dolphins jersey. The Dolphins are playing the home team Colts today.
Fins
What
up.
is you doing, baby?
Hey, at least I have an Indianapolis hat, but fins up.
Man, all right. You don't find a lot of Dolphins fans in Indiana.
No, we're few and far between.
Yes. Like similarly, you don't find a lot of Dolphins in Indiana, being that we are landlocked. So, alas. Hey, speaking of someone who's not landlocked, up there on the great northern coast, Lake Michigan, there's Tracie Martin. Welcome, Tracie.
Hi, guys. Nope, we are definitely not landlocked, although it's getting a little chilly, and I think our beach days may be done. It's hard.
Yeah, I understand it's starting to get awfully icy up there by Chicago. We will talk about that later in the show with our final guest this week, the inimitable Trish Whitcomb. Trish, welcome.
Hi, how's everybody doing today?
Oh, just the end of democracy, Trish, you know. One day at a time.
Let's do what
in
we
this
can
world.
to stop it.
Yes, 100%. So let's dig into this week's story. We're going to start here in Indiana, and I did want to mention this in passing before we get to the other news. Thankfully, football is starting because Indiana's summertime sports star, Caitlin Clark of the WNBA, has been ruled out for the season with a right groin injury, which she acquired in the final minute of the Fever's win over the Connecticut Sun on July 15th. Clark has also missed time this season with left quad and left groin injuries. ESPN confirmed that she suffered a bone bruise in her left ankle during a workout in August that she had to rehab concurrently with her groin. Did I say the word groin enough in that paragraph? Enough for everybody.
You might be able to work it in a few more times.
Listen. We're just reading the copy from ESPN there. Get well soon to Caitlin. It is good to have the eyes of the sports world on Indiana, and to have such a, I would say, game-changing star when she is on the court. But let's dig into the news this week, where we will begin with a couple stories on Republican map-making shenanigans. So we've been following this story for several weeks now on the show. President Trump is pressuring Indiana lawmakers to call a special session and redraw the state's congressional maps. Well, this week, a potential map has come to light, and this is from Wish TV 8. So, a potential map obtained by News 8 on Tuesday showed a scenario under which Indiana could be left with 9 Republican-controlled U.S. House seats out of a total of 9. So 2 sources familiar with the discussion said the map has been circulating among Indiana Republican Party insiders for at least a week, though there have not been any formal discussions surrounding them. The sources, who asked not to be identified to discuss internal matters, said several versions of the maps exist, Some give Indiana Republicans an 8-1 advantage in the House, while others would provide a 9-0 advantage. The sources said the maps are purely hypothetical and no formal discussions have taken place. They said the maps came from allies of the Trump administration in Washington, not Indiana Republicans. Notable about this map. So, House districts would be redrawn in a manner that would give Republicans a double-digit edge in all of them. Notably, Marion County, that's Indianapolis, would be split among the 6th, 7th, and 8th districts, with Democrat Andre Carson facing a district that stretches into deep red southeastern Indiana. Now, Trish, you've been around Indiana politics for a long time. Have you ever seen something so brazen?
So egregious. Yeah, I can't even figure out what district I would be in on this map, and I live in Marion County. So the most outstanding thing about all of this, though, is the poll that was released 10 days ago, maybe. And at the beginning of the poll, they asked Hoosiers, how do you feel about redistricting? And it was a slight majority of Hoosiers who said that they opposed it. During the commission of the survey, the people were told, what does it really mean and how will it change? And that number of disapproval went up to 61%.
Wow.
So my entire comment on this is going to be a theme that we've started talking about, and it is the Republicans are in the I don't care club. Hoosiers have voiced their opinion about this. They have said, we do not want this, just like we did not want Senate Bill 1, anti-abortion bill. They say that Hoosiers tell the legislature what they want when they are asked individually, and yet the Republicans just do not care. And so that's what I got to say about this map. I have seen, I call the 9th district my home district because I'm from Seymour, and that was capably led by Lee Hamilton and Barron Hill for years and years and years. And now, you know, it's gone back and forth and all over the place, and we'll just see what happens. But the number one thing is Hoosiers are opposed to even the concept of redistricting, but they don't care.
Yeah, so Tracie, I mean, I don't know if you've seen this thing, but it is so egregious that it even splits up the Northwest Indiana region. So up in your area now, I mean, I grew up there. The Northwest Indiana has always been a sort of contiguous congressional district. Lake, Porter, LaPorte counties, at least District 1 under this map would put Lake County and half of Porter County in with a large rural district, expanding from Kentland out to like Kokomo and Peru and Logansport. Meanwhile, it would put northern Porter County with LaPorte County and part of St. Joe in with the second district, splitting South Bend, splitting Fort Wayne, like we already talked about, splitting Indianapolis into 3. How do you feel about potentially sharing a congressional district with Kokomo or Peru, Logansport?
The reason why Northwest Indiana's contiguous district is the way it is because our economic engine is dramatically different than Kokomo. We don't have a lot in common with rural Indiana because that's just not the life we live up here. And how they believe that they can find any way to represent all of those districts in one way, good luck to that. I mean, it is absolutely, of course, exactly what it looks like. A naked power grab that is not going over well with Hoosiers because that's just not the way Indiana rolls. Indiana prides itself, at least it used to, on moderation and fairness. Those are bedrock values that Hoosiers care about. And I'll say what I said earlier. Bring it. They might believe that they're going to be getting a double-digit advantage here, but that advantage could evaporate like that if this economy keeps tanking in the way this economy is planning to tank. Because a lot of the promises that Trump sold these people when they voted for him, they're gone. So try it. Indiana is far more purple than everybody likes to believe it. All you got to do is look at the granular voting data.
Yes, 100%. So, I mean, Derrick, is Tracie onto something there? Is this a potential trap for Republicans? You know, are they spreading their voters too thin in the case of a wave election?
Yeah. I mean, they're putting Marion County in 3 different districts. And that's going to bring more Democrats into districts that they weren't in before. And the way that some of these counties, especially the donut counties,
Mm-hmm.
they're getting more people coming from Indianapolis. Martinsville got 69 running through it. That connects Indianapolis and Bloomington. Martinsville is being dragged kicking and screaming into modernity, and it's turning deep purple. So I think they're shooting themselves in the foot while doing this, in at least looking at it 4 districts, maybe 5, where it's a coin toss. It can become a coin toss.
Well, I'll tell you what. If 4 or 5 districts in this state were competitive, that would be a far more realistic representation of where Hoosiers are at. I'll tell you that. Now, I will say this as far as gerrymandering and this whole push in Indiana, in Texas, in California, everywhere across the country. This is not going to be Trump and Republicans' only play in trying to rig the 26 election. They're going to try gerrymandering. They're going to try voter suppression. They're going to try voter ID. They're going to try banning mail-in voting. They're going to throw everything against the wall, see what can get through the courts, and try their best to win this election next year, no matter what the people think. Yes, Trish.
Scott, that you did just bring up something that I forgot that I was thinking about when I saw this map. Coming into a special session, they could do away with mail-in ballots at the same time. They could make some very big statements during this special session. They're not limited to what they can discuss. And so I say, let's look at the fact that they may be doing away with mail-in ballots. And I would start talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's already hard to vote by mail here in Indiana, but they could definitely make it even harder. I mean, some states do it almost exclusively, like Washington, Oregon, Colorado. Trump's coming after those states because of their mail-in balloting, and I'm gonna bring that up again later in the next section. But I do want to move on to another kind of map-making shenanigans story in its own way, where Mike Braun this week named 5 members to a commission that will examine how Indiana could redraw its state lines to include nearly a third of Illinois' counties. This is from the Peoria Journal-Star via Yahoo News. So the Indiana-Illinois Boundary Adjustment Commission was created as a result of passing House Bill 1008 in May, with the goal of examining how Indiana could accept counties seceding from Illinois. 33 Illinois counties have previously voted to explore the idea of secession, according to NBC5 Chicago. It is important to note, however, that some of the Illinois secession movement leaders have indicated the purpose of their separation votes was not to join Indiana. Many counties instead passed such referendums to study the possibility of secession, spurred on by a feeling of being underrepresented in their government. So let's put a pin in that. I mean, if seceding from your state was an option because of feeling underrepresented by your government, Monroe County,
Why?
Bloomington, where I live, would be a tiny exclave within the state. Derrick, I didn't think you could do this. I thought that this was vague, like unconstitutional in general. That new states could not be carved out of existing states. And that state lines would need an act of Congress to change.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I don't know. Why don't we just create, 57 states with minor city states all over the place? Chicago and Indianapolis can be their own state, city state, and form a coalition to fight Cornland or whatever.
Dude,
I don't know.
Tracie, do you look forward to being annexed by Chicago?
yes. I'm sorry, but every time they talk about this, we're like, please, how about we just go? Can we please just go? Okay. Against my will, I love Indiana. I love the people here. I love the kindness, but for God's sakes, like, don't tease me. Like, so many problems would be solved for us personally if we could skit-scat paddywhack over to Illinois.
Well, so Trish, let me ask you. Are they on to something? I mean, listen, this whole boundary commission thing is just for show. But are our state lines, are our county lines, or our district lines, should these all be up for renegotiation to maybe better reflect people's lived reality on the ground?
During your open statement, you said that these people who live in these counties in Illinois feel like they are underrepresented in their legislature because they are in corn country. That's a great moniker. Wait till they see what it's like to live in Southern Indiana. That's all I got to say about that. Is the underrepresentation of rural areas is a major factor in people leaving our precious, wonderful small towns and farm communities, and people want to have opportunity. They want their kids to get a good education. They want transportation. They want access to healthcare. They want the basics of life. And every year, the Indiana legislature puts more and more assets into municipalities because that's where the people live. And I understand that's a form of economic argument, but we still, I envision a time when all we have are like little farm stations and little places, extraction stations out in the rural counties, and everyone has been moved to a city. So if these people in Illinois think that they're going to, and look at those counties on the western border of Illinois, they think they're going to have something in common with Indiana lawmakers, and that's going to make their life better. That's just crazy.
They all might talk about the same conservative talking points, but like you said, Trish, these Republicans haven't exactly been doing a great job representing rural Indiana, and I don't think they would do a much better job representing rural Illinois. So let's move on and change gears a little bit here, and I've got a couple stories about Trump's ICE Gestapo coming to Indiana. So first of all, this one from the Indy Star. Indiana National Guard troops will mobilize to assist ICE with transportation and logistics across the state beginning in mid-September, a spokesperson for Governor Mike Braun confirmed. It's going to be around 50 Hoosier Guardsmen helping ICE officials with tasks such as answering phones, biometric collection, tracking expenses, entering data, and maintaining vehicles. They will not engage in law enforcement functions or make arrests, the spokesperson said. So, plans to have Guardsmen assist ICE is the latest evidence that Indiana is preparing to become a linchpin of Trump's mass deportation efforts. The state is making 1,000 beds at the Miami Correctional Facility available for immigrant detainees awaiting deportation, and Trump plans to use Camp Atterbury to hold detainees as well. Indiana already has one of the largest detention centers in the Midwest in Brazil's Clay County Jail, which has moved more than 3,000 people through its facility since Trump took office. Tracie, answering phones, tracking expenses, data entry. Is this the best use for our National Guardsmen?
To be honest, I have a different perspective, I think, than most people would, because if they're busy down there, maybe they're not going to be coming up here to fucking Chicago and occupying. I'm not kidding. I haven't talked about this a lot with people, but on Labor Day, I was up in Gary at the beach and I was coming back and I got stopped by a train, as everybody gets stopped by a train up here. And I have the video of this. I saw a convoy on flatbeds of military jeeps. Boom, 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 boom. Now it looked like they were headed away from Chicago. But I'm going to tell you, I have never, in all the years I've lived up here and been stuck on those train tracks on that kind of day, ever seen any military anything. The only thing you see up here are the South Shoreline and, shipping containers. So we're freaked out about ICE up here. But no, I do not believe that's what our National Guard should be doing. I think they should be doing things like mitigating all kinds of issues with climate, hardening us against climate change, helping with anything else, getting ready to help FEMA or prepare to take over as FEMA, since that's going to be going away soon. Yeah, but
Yeah. Well, Derrick, you're a veteran. You're a member of the armed services, right? Like, how does this make you feel?
Oh, so many feelings. First of all, any men and women of our armed forces should not be used on home soil, no matter their use. Yes, they may be administrative work, but still, that's not what they signed up for. They signed up to serve the state and serve the nation, not serve the ego of a few people. So, no, it's not right whatsoever to utilize our brave men and women in uniform for this type of horrific grandstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. They may not be used for law enforcement functions, as this article states, but the mission is still fundamentally unconstitutional. Trish, do you agree?
Oh, of course I agree with that. And I'm taking from the perspective of the Guard, the members of the National Guard themselves. There's a practice that's been used in these other deployments of National Guard personnel to Washington, D.C. and other places where the guidelines for receiving full benefits for National Guard is after you are on active duty deployed for 31 days or more, you are entitled to benefits. So they have used the corporate approach with these Guard to put them in for 29 or 30 days, take them out for a day or two. They don't even have time to go home and see their families. They don't have, and then they purposely redeploy them for another 29, 30 days. And the unjust treatment of people who have signed up to protect our country in different ways, like with FEMA and with other disasters, are being treated so absolutely poorly. It really is heartbreaking. And then the other thing is, once again, our tax dollars are going to prop up the police state that Donald Trump wants to create. There has been $120 million spent in Los Angeles alone on the deployment of those troops. And we saw what the court said about that. So this is where we're going on this, folks. We are going. This is our little showcase. I have been in places where armed active duty personnel are on the streets, and even though I know I'm perfectly safe as who I am, it was very unsettling. So I think this is just a preview to get people used to seeing armed troops or even just people in uniforms in their everyday midst, to desensitize and to normalize a police state.
And what we were talking about earlier, vis-a-vis elections, I think they're going to want us accustomed to troops in the streets before Election Day next year, where they may be used for other purposes. So along these lines, there's another ICE story. So in Indianapolis, Democrats on the city county council are clashing with a Democratic sheriff about holding ICE detainees in the Marion County Jail. So a routine budget hearing this week turned into a rebuke of Marion County Sheriff Kerry Forrestal. This story from Mirror Indy, by the way. So Forrestal faced calls from residents and some members of the council to stop housing U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement detainees in the local jail. Some Democrats on the committee went so far as to say they won't vote to approve the sheriff's annual budget unless he ended the agreement with the federal government to house ICE detainees, which currently leads to a payment of $75 per day for each detainee. Forrestal, a Democrat who's in his last term, faced more than an hour of questioning and public comment. He told counselors that he is upholding the law, pointing to Governor Braun's executive order on immigration and a letter from Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita, who threatened to sue local sheriffs who don't cooperate with federal immigration authorities. The Attorney General has filed lawsuits against the sheriffs in Monroe and St. Joseph counties. Democratic counselors Perkins, Delaney, Mascari, Boots, and Carlino all pressed Forrestal to end cooperation with ICE. Republican counselors largely praised the sheriff. So, Trish, going to come back to you here. This is an interesting dynamic. This is some Democrat on Democrat friction here in Indianapolis with the sheriff. What do you think?
It's very political. And the one thing that the one thing that elected officials in Marion County know is that anything they do that will bring the state in to take action against them usually ends very poorly. So while I absolutely myself personally think that it is wrong to use our local law enforcement in this way, I can understand how Sheriff Forrestal is looking at the consequences for Marion County if Rokita doesn't need an excuse to do crazy things. And so we don't know what kind of consequences our sheriff's department would experience if they didn't play ball. I mean, this is what happens with a lot of things. And the legislature undoes the city council ordinances and laws all the time. And so to think about the consequences for our Marion County Sheriff's Department to go up against a state that is so heavily stacked with Republicans, I can see why the sheriff is cautious. Although I want to reiterate, I am totally opposed to that policy.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tracie, I would say the sheriffs here in Monroe and up in St. Joseph County, that's South Bend, those sheriffs have not cooperated with ICE to this point, and are being sued by Rokita. But it's not. There are some folks who are standing up. Sheriff Forrestal is the head of the largest county, law enforcement agency in the state. If sheriffs like Ruben Marte here in Monroe County and the St. Joseph County sheriff can stand up and say no, can't this guy?
Well, you'd think. But that would require caring more about human beings and decency and basic human kindness than political expediency. And that's just not something that we're seeing much in the Republican Party to date, or, anywhere. So I don't know. I don't know what to say about this one. I'm a little boggled by, in general, the drift in our nation where people are completely forgetting that, immigrants are human beings that live, breathe, work, eat, and shop at the same grocery store as you.
Yeah.
I find it difficult to understand how that's a lesson that everybody needs to learn. I'm glad that there are some. It'd be nice if this other one could step up, but hey.
Well, furthermore, Derek, $75 a day. That's an awfully small price for one's mortal soul, don't you think?
I could have thought mine was at least $145.23.
Oh, man, what tree fitting.
Last time that I priced it on Amazon Marketplace, that's what it was worth. But no, in honesty, $75. That's, to clothe, feed, house, take care of their medical, dental, all that stuff for $75 a day. Can I get on that plan, please? It costs more to exist on this earth than $75 a day.
Yeah, let me tell you, the accommodations are probably not great for that kind of cost. But so here's the thing about that. Like, you've got a Democratic sheriff and aligning with the Republican counselors more than like in his own party. He's in a weird spot. So let's just say, as a voter, you're not particularly pleased with either of the two parties because they find themselves in weird situations like this, where really, what is a Democrat and what is a Republican? The lines get iffy. So this week, a new initiative launched, and this story is from Indiana Public Media. This initiative, called Independent Indiana, launched Tuesday to help spotlight and provide resources to Hoosiers who are running and winning as independents. The idea began when Executive Director Nathan Gotch, himself a 2022 independent candidate for Congress, dug into election results across the state. In 2023 and 24, 244 independent candidates qualified for partisan races, said Gotch in a news release. More than half of them, 52%, won. Those results point to something real happening in Indiana politics, continued the quote from Gotch. So, to get on the ballot, candidates must collect petition signatures from registered voters equal to 2% of the most recent Secretary of State vote in their district. Now, for a statewide race, that can mean like 37,000, maybe 50,000 if you factor in rejections. With paid circulators charging like $15 per valid signature, ballot access for a statewide independent candidate can cost more than $700,000. So, let's see, where did we leave off, Derek? Tracie, let me come back to you here. Is this a waste of time? Is this guy better suited trying to elect Democrats or Republicans, or is this a worthwhile endeavor?
All right. My liberal progressive activist heart says, you know what? I'm really, 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 really sick of holding my nose and voting for moderate Democrats that don't reflect my values. I would love there to be a space for, more independence of thought in our candidates. But at the same time, the American political system is built and it's ingrained and baked into every law, detail, and structure that supports our political system as a two-party system. So if you right now, with the stakes this high, do I want to throw my vote away? No, I don't. So I guess on the balance, yes, it's a waste of time. And yes, you should be trying to get involved in your local Democratic political organizations and fight for change on the ground. But that's not a sexy sell to anyone because it's work. So
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure, this independent Indiana thing is work, but I think they're working uphill, don't you, Trish?
Well, I think that a closer look at this data, well, number one, I kind of have some issues with the overall methodology, but I would also suggest that looking more closely at this data would inform people that most of these people who are running as independents actually vote for Democratic policies when they get in office and have Democratic primary voting history. And in Southern Indiana, especially, this is a perennial question. I mean, when I ran for legislature, people were saying, why don't you run as an independent or even a Republican? And I'm like, because I'm not. But yeah, so this whole thing is, as Democrats, we look and we say, well, if they can't get elected as a Democrat, maybe they could be a Republican, but they have to promise to remain true to Democratic principles and policies. And so that's a little bit of information under the surface that I think would be interesting for people to consider. But I do not agree with that thing of running as an independent if you're really a Democrat. So, but our brand as Democrats is so toxic in some parts of the state. And if this means that some of the people who are closest to the electorate can put in more progressive policies and support ideas that really help people because they really are Democrats and they want to help people, then it's not so bad.
That's interesting, Trish. I didn't really perceive of it from that lens. So this could really just be a way for us to shift the balance of power in Indiana. Now that
will
gives
never be enough to do that. It will never be enough to do that. We will never have enough independent. We couldn't have an independent Speaker of the House. I mean,
true.
You know, that's
so
where
key positions. So this could
Yeah.
we could sneak some Democrats in maybe, but for key seats of power, it just wouldn't fly. You think?
Yeah, I am thankful for the incremental benefits that come to communities because of these independents who are actually Democrats. No Republican is going to run as an independent. Have you ever thought about it that way? Why would you sever your tie to the predominant brand when all you have to do is put your name on the ballot and you get elected? So think of how many of these independents are actually Democrats.
Yeah, there's a lot there that I hadn't thought about. I mean, obviously, so much of the way we do our elections, like Tracie said, lends itself to a two-party system. That's just, poli-sci 101. That's Duverger's law, which I've talked about a million times on the podcast before. But on the other hand, Trish mentions the branding. And there are some folks, I believe there was a candidate in Nebraska who ran as an independent last year and came really close to winning. The Democrats kind of cleared the field and let him take their line. I want to say this guy out in Maine who's running against Susan Collins now is an independent who would basically caucus with the Democrats. And you look at people like Angus King and Bernie Sanders. There are places where it makes sense from just a branding standpoint. I think I would have to find out more about this Independent Indiana Commission and what exactly they stand for. I want to move on. Derek, I'm going to kind of come back to you first on our next one here. 3 stories in a segment I like to call Rokita, Morales, or both. So this week, 21 attorney generals added their signatures to a letter penned by Indiana AG Todd Rokita to express support for eliminating DEI requirements for federal contractors. Earlier this year, the Department of Labor proposed rescinding affirmative action requirements for companies that work with the federal government, something the attorneys general said the Department of Labor should do quickly. Rokita said the following in his letter, quote, "The federal government has no right to mandate affirmative action plans that prioritize ideology over merit. These regulations promote unlawful discrimination, undermine true equal opportunity, and needlessly burden employers. Federal contractors should hire based on skill and experience, not political agendas. Derrick, can you parse what Rokita's really saying there?
We want to hire just really, really light brown skinned people. No, I mean, what is DEI? I mean, what's wrong with diversity, inclusion, equity? It scares a lot of extreme right-wing people that these people are not like us. We need to be scared of these people. And I mean, I'm very much a merit-based person myself, but if you put, and scientific studies have shown this, if you put two people, one white, one black, one brown, or put three people, most people are going to go towards what color skin they are. I mean, it's human nature to do that if everything else was equal. And that's what DEI tries to get around or stop from happening, is we need different points of view in everything that we do. It can't just be whitewashed. And that's what we're trying to stop from happening.
You very good points there, Derrick. Tribalism is kind of part of human nature. And especially with these folks like Rokita and these other Republican attorneys general, they think white equals competent. And they think anybody else is incompetent by definition, because, I mean, let's just say it, they're racists. But Derrick makes a very good point, because, and Tracie, I'm going to take this up to someone in your area. Here's State Rep Earl Harris Jr. from East Chicago. He says,
love him.
DEI, he says DEI is about merit, and that's what employers want. They want to hire the best, so why would we make it so hard that it makes it harder for them to get access to the best? Furthermore, here's a quote from, I don't have a first name here, but this is a Reverend Green.
David
who also says, thank you, Trish. If you put something in place that creates less competition, you're not going to save money. The data shows from DEI that a lot of the minority companies are able to do it cheaper. If we go back to the good old boys network, we're not going to be, quote unquote, saving money. Tracie, what do you think? Good point?
It's an excellent point. I mean, we all really know what's going on here. It is exactly what it looks like. They inbred tribalism run amok and let out. Like, if I once listened to, this is going to be a little bit of a wild tangent, but like, I once listened to this podcast where they talked about somebody who talked about if they could go back in time and change their genetics to reassure your body that something is not going to happen, they would pick, I'm not going to starve, which would solve the obesity epidemic. And then I would add in tribalism, getting rid of the ingrained human instinct to create in and out groups. How much of our society would be improved by removing that instinct? And the other thing to consider up here is it's DEI. It's not just, Black and brown people that are impacted by these hiring practices. DEI initiatives also help to hire people that have other disabilities, intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities. I have 2 autistic kids. If there's a world where they could be incredibly relevant and impactful in the workforce, but sometimes they need minor accommodations. Our DEI initiatives help pay for that. So it's not just about skin color. It's about who are we including in the table in our society, and why are we making it more difficult to utilize all the different viewpoints and skill sets that these different groups bring.
Yeah, white women have been the largest beneficiaries of DEI programs.
Hell yeah.
Because it's like, let's look at what Rokita is saying here, Trish, and I tell me if I'm right. I think what they're saying is, look, we just want to hire who we know are the best. I mean, these are obviously, it's like they're like political donors and they're friends and stuff, and this is who Republicans want to give like state contracts to. And when you have things like affirmative action and DEI, makes you puts a process in place that says, hey, wait, slow down, let's look at everybody and see if someone else here who is just as capable can do it for cheaper, right? It sounds like DEI is a good way to save money, to be efficient as a government, to spend wisely. I thought Republicans liked these things.
No, 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 they don't. And I think back as we're talking about this, because often my mind goes to the big construction projects, the highway projects, the things where the real money is, And I think about the substandard concrete that was used on I-65. That was not a minority contractor. They were not the ones that did that part of the work. They had some other supplemental part of the job, the little cheesy part, but it was the good old boy network that had the big contract that used that substandard concrete. So oh yeah, there's a lot going on. So I know that minority contracting has really been a boom to Southern Indiana because of, I don't know if you all know the Thomas family down there, big contractors, and they now are so big they wouldn't need to have a DEI thing because they are, playing in the big pool. But the thing is, they've brought so many benefits to Southern Indiana, which brings me to my last comment about DEI, which is now the term rural, RURAL, is considered a DEI designation. And so we're going to get rid of programs that are supposed to focus on people who live out in the country. So
yeah, exactly.
Run amok. Well, and part of it, real quick, is it costs more to help people in sparsely populated areas. That's just an economic fact of life. But this is, we want to save the money for all the rich people who live in Indianapolis or, wherever they live. And we're not going to do what needs to be done to support somebody who's different from us, big city people who, have everything going for us.
That's another interesting one, Trish. Like, I didn't realize that DEI initiatives folded in rural outreach.
Yeah.
I wonder
we talked about here, on the show before, like the like rural broadband programs that have been canceled by the Trump administration. It was about equity. And because they cut out these DEI programs, they wind up hurting rural populations as well. Definitely a case of shooting yourself in the foot. Hey, well, so I wanted to move on from Rokita and talk about Diego Morales for just a moment. Now, listen, he didn't do anything bad this week that we know of, but he is in the news because Morales is hosting a series of public meetings on whether the state should require all municipal elections to move to presidential or congressional midterm election years. Part of the meeting was a presentation by the Secretary of State's office. It covered the potential cost savings and voter turnout impact of moving municipal elections. So, municipal elections statewide in 2023 cost about $18 million, with voter turnout of just 20%. There are more public meetings like this in coming weeks in Jeffersonville, in Lake County. Tracie, maybe you should check that one out. And down in Evansville. Also a part of these public meetings is a consideration of vote centers, which we have talked about here in the past. But for right now, Derrick, I wanted to ask you whether you think moving municipal elections to even-numbered years is a good idea.
I mean, if you think about purely the cost benefit of it, yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea because you're not having another, election cycle that you have to gear everything up for. You pay the same employees, the same people doing, you don't have to get more people for 3 years out of 4-year cycle. You only need it every other year type thing. The bad part of it is the national election will overshadow local elections. Yeah, you get more voters out, but you kind of destroy the municipality of the odd year election cycle.
Yeah. Like, so you're saying you want the municipal election to be like the only show in town for that year. It really, the people that it brings to that election are the people who are really invested in the local election, as opposed to people who are maybe just paying attention to the national stuff. Tracie, what do you think? I mean, it's kind of a balance you got to weigh, right? Is it like there's the cost, there's the voter turnout thing, and then, like Derrick says, there's the, are you even paying attention to the local races in that sort of scenario?
I'm on the fence about this one. Like, I don't want to be reflexively, no, don't change anything. Like, I want to give credence to the idea that there is the possibility that this is logistically better all around for everyone. But that said, it would be nice if people would spend a little more time focused on municipal elections, just so that you can stay ahead of the noise. Because historically we've seen that that's not the case most times, and especially if you are going for if you do make this shift, the local elections are going to get no attention, and then that divides not only people's attention, but it divides the resources that people who are like the Democratic Party or whoever's working to promote these agendas. It divides their ability to focus on one thing, so they don't have the ability to just say, pay attention to this and to canvas about that or promote it or campaign on it. So I guess I've just talked myself back into a circle of where I'm still kind of on the fence about it.
There's a lot of things to consider. I mean, Trish, I think one of the criticisms I read about this proposal was that the ballot would just be really long. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I agree with that. Here, my number one thought about this is part of the reason that the turnout in municipal elections is so low is because there's only one party on the ballot. I'm sorry. There are so many places in Indiana where Democrats don't even run people for city council or mayor. And so in some ways, we have ourselves to blame for the fact that only 12% of Hoosiers vote in municipal elections. So let's look at it that way. I think we need to go back to the reason that these municipal elections were carved out in the first place. And it was for the very reasons you guys are talking about, because we need to focus on the things that happen in our own cities. Now, the Indiana Republicans in the legislature have taken away a lot of the municipal power to govern themselves, like to keep guns out of their parks or any of these other kinds of things that over the years, the Indiana General Assembly has become the largest city council in the country. And so I am totally opposed to this idea, because when you put that together with partisan elections of school board candidates, this is rigging. This is another manifestation of what Scott's been talking about. There will be other ways for these guys to keep power that they don't deserve.
There's a lot more to think about here than I thought. What's up, Tracie?
Can I just throw out an unpopular Democratic opinion about the school board things?
Sure.
I'm going to admit that I'm horn about this because I live in a town that has been MAGA'd up the ass now. We're paying the price of it, which is why I'm leaning strongly to your perspective that we need to keep our municipal elections separate. But that said, as a parent with kids in the system, I want to know the political affiliation of my school board candidates because I want to be sure that they're not going to be electing some MAGA jackass that wants to ban trans kids or prevent my kid from using different pronouns or cancel my special education services or defund it to the point where it's not working. Like there is an argument. I understand the tradition of not having any sort of political listings on and party affiliations for school board candidates, but there is a perspective where it's beneficial to have that information before you vote.
Just my only rebuttal to that is,
Please.
if you feel that way and there are people who are running who are anti-trans and all the things that you've listed that I would oppose to, then get to a public forum, ask them the questions and make them say out loud these positions, and then run against gather up your neighbors to oppose them based on their positions. It's the positions that we oppose. It's not the individual people, it's their positions that we oppose. And educate people in education I know this better than anybody else on this call. Teachers, people in education do not like politics. You know, I made Glenda Ritz's successful 2012 when she got elected, the last Democrat to get elected in Indiana. And I can tell you, it was like pulling teeth to get teachers to understand that you have to vote for a Democrat because the education policy is different. But they don't want, the people who are really invested in public education are opposed to the I can't say it, making it political.
Politicization. Oh, it is hard to say.
Politicization. There we go.
Thank you.
So that's my comment.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron. Sorry, Scott.
I am going to move to the last story in that little segment here because this one involves both Morales and Rokita. So this week, the Indiana Citizen filed a lawsuit against both of them, seeking a list of more than 585,000 registered Hoosier voters sent to the federal government to verify citizenship status. The offices have until now refused to provide it. So, reporter Marilyn Odendahl requested this list in October of 2024 after Secretary of State Morales and Attorney General Rokita issued news releases about this request. The letter, addressed to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Director, asked the agency to use its person-centric query service to verify a list of names and dates of birth. The list of over 585,000 includes those who registered without an Indiana driver's license number or a social security number or who live overseas. Indiana currently has about 4.8 million residents registered to vote, so this letter invited scrutiny of about 12% of the total voter roll. Derrick, they need to give this thing up, right? I mean, if they're trying to block almost 600,000 Indiana voters, or at least questioning whether these folks are eligible to vote, shouldn't that be a matter of public record?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, people have the right to know who's on this list. I mean, 12% may seem like a small number, but 12% can flip any race in the state almost. So
that is a huge chunk of voters.
Yeah.
Yes. And mind you, the Secretary of State's office told the Citizen earlier it has identified about 1,600 registered voters as potential non-citizens based on information from the BMV and the vendor overseeing the statewide voter registration system. So they're going to challenge, Trish, tell me if I'm reading this correctly. They're going to challenge something like 600,000 voters to see whether these folks are really citizens. They've maybe found about 1,600 so far. And from what I understand about that 1,600, of the potential non-citizens, they got notices that they had to go rectify it. And wouldn't you know, most of them rectified it. They are citizens. It's just a paperwork mix-up somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So if I read that correctly, they're just essentially going to like knock 12% of the voters off the rolls for nothing.
Oh, not for nothing, Scott, for the public relations benefit that they feel they're getting from the MAGA base for doing something like this. It's not for nothing. This is another example how Hoosier taxpayers are footing the bill for MAGA political gains. And I am so tired of it. And in full disclosure, I need to tell you that just recently I have gone on board with Indiana Citizen to be their development director. So woo. And so no, but this suit has such merit. And in one of the articles I read about it, it's like only selected groups are entitled to see the voter rolls. You know what those selected groups are? Political parties, political candidates, political consultants. Now, if all those and because I have accessed the voter file myself in all three of those manifestations. So to say that this Indiana citizen in a lawsuit is not entitled to see these voter rolls is absolute made up bunk. How'd you like my nice discipline there? It's bunk.
Well played,
again,
Trish.
Thank you. But once again, I want to reinforce this because it is the theme that I see emerging in all this. Hoosier taxpayers are footing the bill for political BS, and it has got to stop.
Yeah. I want to get to our couple last Indiana stories as per usual. I'm running really long, but this last pair of stories are under a headline I like to call GOP making Indiana a terrible place to be a kid. So first of all, child care providers around Indiana will see reimbursement rates cut by 10 to 35% beginning in November as the state's Family and Social Services Administration tries to close a $225 million funding gap. This maneuver could push providers to drop out of a low-income child care program, however. The story I am quoting from the folks at the indispensable Indiana Capitol Chronicle. So, according to Adam Olson, the director of the Office of Early Childhood and Out-of-School Learning, that is a mouthful of a title, he says, we made this decision to protect the children and families that depend on Child Care Development Fund vouchers. There is only one pot of money, and we could either protect the providers or the kids, and we chose the kids. So this Child Care Development Fund is a federal program that provides financial assistance via subsidies or vouchers to low-income families to help them pay for child care so parents can work or attend education and training programs. And just interjecting my own thought here, they talk about all these work requirements and stuff that they like to put on folks receiving Medicaid, and then they don't give them an opportunity to have childcare so they can go work, and people find themselves in this catch-22 situation. Anyway, I digress. Right now, 55,000 children receive such vouchers, above the pre-pandemic average of 35,000. When the pandemic assistance waned, the state tapped surplus money from TANF program to cover the loss, but those funds are also no longer available, which means the state would have to pull from its general fund to make up the difference. So instead of cutting the overall number of kids who are receiving these vouchers, they're cutting the payment that they're sending out on these vouchers. So rates for infant and toddler care will drop by 10%. Rates for preschoolers between the ages of 3 and 5 will be cut by 15%, and rates for school-aged children will be cut by 35%. Tracie, thoughts?
This whole new pro-natalist movement that we're seeing, erupting all over the country, okay, great. I'll have some babies for you, but you're just not going to support us.
Oh, we lost Tracie. Yeah, but I think she's going into. They really the Republicans like to say they're pro-life and pro-family and pro-child, right? Well, they're pro-fetus, it seems, but once the child is born, it's like, all right, kid, get to work, basically. Trish, what do you think?
Well, number one, what I think is the threshold for even getting a voucher for children to get daycare or childcare. A family of 4 can only make $37,000. You try raising a family on $37,000, but you can get a voucher to send your child to a private K-12, and that's worth about $8,000 or $9,000 depending where you live, no matter how much money you make. So the number one inequity aspect of this is ridiculous. But the other thing about what kind of person can say that we are doing this to protect the kids when what they're really doing is making it impossible for providers to remain in business, especially in these low income areas. I don't know if you remember that a couple of years ago, there was a $27 million grant from the state of Indiana for daycares to, augment their services and all their outreach. I talked to a woman who runs a daycare network for Jackson County. I said, are you going to apply for that? She said, no. Why would I? Number one, can't compete with McDonald's for the wages I pay. And so this is talking about reducing the wages by as much as 35% for after school care. She said, I can't get people to come work here. I have one woman who come here at 4:30 in the morning because we have one child whose mother needs to drive to Columbus to work at Cummins. That's the dedication that these people have. And yet here's the state of Indiana and I heard a legislator actually say during the session, we don't want to get in the business of subsidizing childcare. So that's where we are. Once again, they do not care. They just do not care.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Look, and if I was in charge of things, I think child care, elder care, and things like this would be these would be infrastructure. I don't even think these would be privately run businesses. It's just so inefficient the way we do things now. And boy, if I recall, say back in early 2021, right after Joe Biden was inaugurated, they were trying to do things like that in the overall larger iteration of the Build Back Better bill, and centrist Democrats squashed that. Disappointingly, I'm going to set up this last story here for Derrick. I haven't heard from you in a while. So, finally, in Indiana this week, Indianapolis students joined a nationwide rally for gun safety reform. Many of them walking out of school Friday to gather on the south steps of the Indiana State House. This event was organized in response to the recent school shooting at the Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis, where 2 children were killed and 18 more were injured. As of 2023, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention listed firearms as the leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 17 in the U.S., and Everytown for Gun Safety ranks Indiana 27th in the country for gun law strength. Derrick, thoughts?
As a former proud candidate that was actually endorsed by Everytown for Gun Safety last year, it's pretty much at the point where we are beating a dead horse. We need to get red flag laws in place. We need to make sure people that shouldn't have guns don't have guns. We're not trying to take the guns away from you. We're just trying to make sure the wrong people don't have them. They are locked up securely. Ammunition is in a separate location. That way, a kid can't just walk up to it and, their friend is gone. So we have to do it smart. And these people just hear, oh, you want to do something about my guns? Oh no, I'm gonna lose my guns. No, we just have to do it smartly.
Yeah, well, here's how dumb we're currently doing it. Right, no gun control in Indiana. You can carry. Listen, the last legislation Indiana passed regarding firearm use was this past session, House Bill 1296, which repealed the law requiring a person to obtain a license to carry a handgun. Oh, sorry, that was a couple years ago. That was signed by Holcomb in 2022. So that's the kind of gun control laws we have. No gun control, but here's $27 million for beefing up school security. Saw this one also this week from Channel 13 in Indianapolis. Nearly $30 million will go to 494 schools and school systems across the state, thanks to Indiana Homeland Security's School Safety Initiative. The schools that applied for this $27 million in grant money ranked categories for what its district needed the most, including school resource officers, technology, support services, firearms training for staff, design and construction, site vulnerability assessment, bullying prevention, and a few others. Now, this last stat really tells you what's going on here. The majority of the money went toward funding school resource officers, nearly $19 million for 328 schools.
So the same people that in Vivaldi walked out or ran out of the school, they're funding more for. Okay, just want to make sure that I got it.
No gun control, just more police. That is the solution for everything, it seems. Tracie, closing thoughts on Indiana before we move to our national stories this week?
Yes. I've known good school resource officers, and I've known ones that have that position because they're not able to serve the public anymore. The logic gap that we consistently need to leap over to justify not engaging in basic gun control, at some point we're going to be pretzels, or our brains are going to just roll out of our ears. How we continue to have to say, or just skip past the idea that, hey, if there were less guns or less people had them, we wouldn't need to have lockdown drills and 15 school resource officers and metal scanners at our doors and all of this money going for all of these security measures. I don't want to live in a police state. I don't know why people do.
Yeah, Tracie, very, very interesting that you went with police state as your last words there, because we're going to talk about police state a lot in our U.S. World section. Let us move on there, where, if you recall, boy, it seems like forever ago, but last week there was a time when Donald Trump didn't appear in public for 6 days, and a lot of people thought maybe he was dead, dying, and there was speculation all around about it. And then, well, Tuesday, he just shows up again like nothing's wrong. So on Tuesday, Trump, in a press conference, announced that he is moving Space Command headquarters from Colorado to Alabama, and he cites mail-in voting as the reason he's doing such. Trump says, "Problem I have with Colorado, one of the big problems, they do the mail-in voting. They want all mail-in voting, so they have automatically crooked elections," Trump said in the Oval Office. And while Trump had announced, and it was later confirmed, that Huntsville was the preferred location for Space Command, originally, the Biden administration halted those plans in 2023 because of concerns with Alabama's restrictive abortion law. As a result, the head of Space Command decided that year that the military branch would build out its headquarters in Colorado Springs instead. Trish, just before we get to the Space Command stuff, did you think last week that maybe we were rid of this guy, at least for a little bit? Did you let yourself believe?
Well, there's some stuff that just it doesn't get into my brain, and so that was one of them. I'm afraid I just no. But this thing about this is once again moving. This is not a free thing to do. This is not a cost-free move to change the entire Space Command from one state to another. And I've been to that Huntsville facilities down there. They're fantastic, and maybe that's where it should have been all the time. But and I think if you're going to say, well, it was a political reason that Biden did that and blah blah blah. Wait, excuse me. Biden was protecting women's rights to control their bodies. That's what he was doing. And so I just once again, it's political grandstanding, and taxpayers are footing the bill.
You bring up a very good point, Trish, and we're going to come back to that again and again and again, I think, through the rest of the show, that the cost of this police state, the cost of all of these measures that the Trump administration is undertaking are incredibly high for a party and a person who are really claiming to care about government spending and efficiency.
And then the name change from Department of Defense to the War Department.
Oh yeah, we're gonna come back to that one too.
We'll come back to it. I'm sorry. It's just
by all means. I wanted to look at another quick story here. So we've been following this sad case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man who was wrongly deported to El Salvador earlier this year and then kept there for several weeks, despite the government admitting that he was wrongly detained. Well, they've since brought him back, slapped some trumped-up human trafficking charges on him, threatened him with deportation to Uganda, and now, this week, change of plans again. Now, the Trump administration is threatening to deport Abrego Garcia to the tiny African kingdom of Eswatini. Derrick, do you even know where Eswatini is?
Yes, it is landlocked within South Africa, along with Lesotho. Thank you for the geography quiz.
way to go.
Absolutely. So apparently Eswatini is the last absolute monarchy in Africa, which you got to assume that, the good relationship between the Trump administration and the kingdom are because Trump admires that form of government, or at least I suspect so. But Tracie, can they quit jerking this guy around already? I mean, come on, right?
My God, this poor man, he cannot live. And I mean, I think we all understand that this is intentional. And I'm very curious to see where he goes next when, he loses steam with this poor soul. I have to give this man credit. He is not backing down. But I mean, would you blame him? At some point, human beings need to live their lives. It's frightening to me because we are starting to see a lot more pushback against activism and protesters, and I think this is of a piece with that. We're seeing a lot of really aggressive measures against people that are exercising their rights, and the chill tactics, you hear those phrases, but then when you see them in real life, it really does make you pause every time you have to decide, am I going to speak up? Am I going to go to this protest? Am I going to stand my ground? Am I going to stand up for my rights? I hope he prevails.
as do I think all of us. So I'm going to move on to another story this week, and for all the Trump administration's and Republicans' claims that they are the party of a strong economy, wouldn't you know? Friday here, another weak jobs report dropped. This is a month after Trump fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics director for a poor job reports. So I don't know if this is the new people putting out bad numbers too, or what. Or maybe just you can't lie about what's really going on in the economy. So this from NPR. U.S. employers added just 22,000 jobs in August, according to a report Friday from the Labor Department. The unemployment rate inched up to 4.3%, and revised figures also show there was a net loss of jobs in June for the first time since 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. The U.S. has now had 4 months in a row of pretty anemic job growth. Average job growth between May and August of this year was down 75% from the same period a year ago. There was a net loss of jobs in manufacturing, construction, and oil drilling, all industries that the Trump administration is trying to promote. A modest increase in healthcare jobs was partially offset by continued cuts in the federal workforce. The federal government has shed some 97,000 jobs since the beginning of the year, and government payrolls are expected to shrink further in the coming months when severance payments to employees who took buyouts end. Trish, party of a strong economy, huh?
The party of the strong economy knows that lagging economic indicators, as a jobs report is, we've already done the damage we want to do. And so if these reports come out, but here's the other thing, Trump wants to lower interest rates, and that's Federal Reserve is in charge of that. They are in charge of employment, and they are in charge of interest rates. These bad job numbers are making it very, very hard for Trump to get what he wants. He doesn't understand that if we need to put some stimulus in for job creation, that'll raise the inflation. And that is certainly the recipe for not raising interest rates. So, he's killing the economy. As Tracie had mentioned earlier, it's a slow drip, drip, drip. And unfortunately, this kind of information that shows that Americans are suffering under these economic policies is a lagging economic indicator. So we find out after the fact that people are not getting jobs that they deserve. And this doesn't even address the people who aren't looking for jobs anymore. So to me, they say that they're for the working person. They say that they are for a strong economy, but they are not. Their policies just belie that. Left and right. No, just right and right.
and like you said, these numbers lag. We're probably in a recession already. You can see they said the federal government has shed some 97,000 jobs, and it's more like 250,000. A lot of those people are still receiving some form of pay, and that's going to expire here soon. These numbers are going to go up. Wouldn't expect to see more revisions downward. If we saw a negative job growth in June, I bet we're going to see negative growth in July and August when those revised numbers come out a couple months from now. Speaking of the economy, I don't know if you guys saw this, but on Friday, nearly 500 people were detained in Georgia at a sprawling manufacturing site where Korean automaker Hyundai makes electric vehicles. So, this is from the Associated Press. Stephen Schrank, the lead Georgia agent of Homeland Security investigations, said during a news conference Friday that the raid resulted from a months-long investigation into allegations of illegal hiring at the site and was the largest single site enforcement operation in the agency's 2-decade history. Agents focused their operation on an adjacent plant that is still under construction, at which Hyundai has partnered with LG Energy Solutions to produce batteries for the EVs that Hyundai is making at the plant. The South Korean government expressed concern and regret over the operation targeting its citizens. So, like we said, most of the folks in this raid were South Korean nationals. Koreans are rarely caught up in immigration enforcement compared to other nationalities. Only 46 Koreans were deported during the 12-month period ending September 30th, 2024, out of more than 270,000 removals for all nationalities. Derrick, what do you think's going on here?
First of all, the last two stories are through fake news outlets, by the way, NPR, EAP. So we can just
Fake news. Don't listen to them. The economy's great. More jobs than ever.
No, I mean, you can get all conspiracy nutist on this and go, oh, so EV plant. They're trying to, stop renewable energy and the electric vehicles from coming out. Another way you could go is it's South Korea. Trumpy boy likes to praise North Korea, not South Korea. There's all kinds of ways you can go at this. I would love to, but we don't have enough time.
No. Tracie, the way I'm looking at this, it sounds like to me what's happening is that like LG is bringing in a bunch of their people to help get this battery plant off the ground. And, maybe there's some paperwork, maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not. But, some of these folks were here on like maybe tourist visas or visitor visas, and they're actually like doing work at the plant. So, I mean, there may be some like paperwork shenanigans going around, but I don't know, is a roundup and a bunch of, I don't know, people who are probably like electrical engineers and battery experts being rounded up and thrown into ICE facilities the way to go about this thing?
Absolutely not. Crazy issues with my phone. No. These are skilled workers brought in to provide expertise that's not available here in the United States. For whatever reason that be, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But no, they did not deserve to be rounded up and disappeared into some sort of ICE hellhole. Trump's, again, we could, like Derrick was mentioning, try to speculate about, what are the political reasons why he's doing that. But there's another viewpoint that he just was, it's just like a Hydra just doing whatever he wants. One heads over here, one heads over here, one heads over here, causing mischief wherever they can without any real strategy, because he's such an erratic leader. I don't know that I want to give Trump credit for having any sort of forethought to this plan at all. The only thing that I really do want to say about it is that it is of a piece with his economic plans, because the only thing that's going to do is it's going to delay implementation of any of these issues. It's going to delay the plant. It's going to delay any of the economic benefits that plant running and operating is going to have on that community. And it's not going to do what Trump wants to do, which is bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. So, again, I struggle to find any logic here, and I really don't think there is any. I don't think that there's any plan here at all. I think this is just him sitting around trumping. I mean, what other word is there for him? He's just
Yeah, no, it sounds about right to me. And really, this plant was being touted by Georgia Republicans as like the future of manufacturing in the state. The South Korean government's really concerned about their people. This is just a case of the Trump administration crapping all over allies, both domestic and abroad. So, speaking of crapping all over your own people, let's come to New York Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi, who this week said Zoran Mamdani, AOC, and other Democratic socialists should leave the party. So, in a show on, in an appearance on CBS New York's The Point show with Marsha Kramer that aired last Sunday, Suozzi said, quote, Zoran Mamdani and other Democratic socialists should create their own party because I don't want that in my party. Suozzi, whose 3rd congressional district includes parts of Queens as well as Long Island, also said he hopes Mamdani doesn't win the mayoralty because it will be bad for the Democratic Party. Trish, now, I want to tell Mr. Suozzi that the base of the party would probably more like to have AOC and Mamdani and tell him to get lost. Am I wrong?
I'm afraid I'm going to go right along with you. If I could be wearing my Mamdani, campaign button, I would be. The conversation about affordability is the conversation that every Democrat needs to be having right now. There are ways that it can be tailored to the area where a candidate is running. We don't, we're not going to have city grocery stores in Seymour, but excuse me, but the questions of affordability, healthcare, transportation, education, housing, these are the basics of life that people need. And Mamdani is talking about it in a way that AOC is talking about it, in a way that Bernie Sanders is talking about it. Who was the other person he didn't want in the party? I can't remember. Anyway, I don't care, because I am with these people who understand that we're not showing that we're aware of these problems that more people have than perhaps this member of Congress realizes. And as long as Mamdani is willing to talk about it and do something about it, I think it's a lesson for every Democrat.
Yeah, 100%. And listen, I know we're on Project Next. One of the proprietors is Dr. Tim Peck, who I adore, and Suozzi is one of the people he's enjoyed working with when he was doing some work on Capitol Hill. And what I want to say is, Tim, if you're listening, come get your boy. So I want to move on to one of our big national stories this week, and the many trickle down effects from it. This week, President Trump signed an executive order rebranding the Department of Defense as the Department of War, a callback to the department's original name used from 1789 to 1947, the story from USA Today. So the directive will make Department of War the secondary title. It is a way to get around the need for congressional approval to formally rename a federal agency. And Trump said, this is a great Trumpy quote here. He says, "We won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything before that and in between. And then we decided to go woke, and we changed the name to the Department of Defense." The administration has already begun implementing these symbolic changes. Visitors to the Pentagon's defense.gov website are now automatically directed to war.gov.
Good.
Pete Hegseth said, and in this Oval Office presentation, quote, "We're going to go on offense, not just on defense. Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct. We're going to raise up warriors, not just defenders." So this War Department, Mr. President, just like America, is back. Ugh. Yeah.
He sounds like a rapper there for a little bit.
He did. I think he was definitely taking some rhetorical cues from Hakeem Jeffries there.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah.
Derrick, though, as a veteran, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, listen, my initial thought is, well, I mean, at least they're being honest about what they do.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was the Department of War for like you said, a very long time. Then it went to defense. But going back on what Trump said, once we changed to Department of Defense, did he mean we started losing wars? We still have not lost technically a war. Vietnam was a conflict. It was not a war. Korea is a tie because we're still technically at war with North Korea. So we're still undefeated. Woohoo! USA, USA.
Yeah, I would come back with that we haven't fought a just war since we've rebranded to the Department of Defense, which is ironic, considering
actually
name change.
Yugoslavia, Kosovo. That was just because we were saving the genocide of the Kosovars. That was very just, and that was NATO.
That was NATO, though. So I don't know.
I was there.
well, listen. Then we're gonna let you keep that one, okay? But Tracie, listen. What's the point of this? I understand it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars just to update signs on bases from this stupid thing. Worth it? Did we lose you?
No, there we go. No, it is not worth it. And the purpose is marketing. Bold and simple. Just like Trish was talking about earlier, the price of forwarding MAGA's meat to their base and chucking it at them, it just ticks up and ticks up and ticks up. But the question I have is, for a president that campaigned so heavily on stopping wars, who is he planning to go to war with? That's what I want to know.
Well, about that, Tracie, and that's a good segue, because this week, the United States military killed 11 people in a strike on an alleged drug boat from Venezuela. This from Reuters. The U.S. has deployed warships in the southern Caribbean in recent weeks with the aim of following through on a pledge by Trump to crack down on drug cartels. Tuesday's strike appeared to be the first such military operation in the region to that effect. 7 U.S. warships, along with 1 nuclear-powered fast attack sub, are either in the region or expected to be there soon, carrying more than 4,500 sailors and Marines. So, Trish, first of all, you don't send 4,500 sailors and Marines to the Venezuelan coast to sightsee, do you?
This whole episode is mind-boggling from the standpoint, what proof do we have that this is even a drug boat? I'm sorry. I haven't seen anything that has, nothing from the, I almost said Department of Defense, the War Department, that says that this is a drug-carrying boat. So that's number one. Number two, the whole idea of America using international waters to kill people is obscene. It's a terrible, terrible thing. So I don't understand the value of this other than promoting the political agenda. And I even, let's give them a break and say those are drug dealers. Those are drug dealers who also have families, and if those men, I guess they're mostly men, are breaking the law, let's go back to the legality versus lethality argument. And no, it's just terrible.
Right. Well, I've also linked here in the show notes, which, by the way, people should be sure to subscribe to this on Project Next Indiana.com and HoosLeft.us, because the show notes are a fantastic kind of week in review summary as it is. But, along these lines, so from CNN, experts are skeptical of the legality of this strike on this alleged drug boat. So, administration officials are broadly making the argument that these people were legitimate military targets because they were members of the Venezuelan criminal gang Tren de Aragua, which the U.S. has designated as a terrorist organization. And under the authority of Article 2, the president does have the authority to use military force in the national interest. And when it does not amount to war in the constitutional sense, which requires an act of Congress, past administrations have interpreted these standards broadly, especially in the decades-long war on terror against, Al Qaeda and ISIS, and they're basically labeling this, drug cartel as an equivalent sort of group. To Trish's point, Tracie, last time I checked, drug trafficking isn't a capital offense.
No, it is not. The Trump administration has never shied away from declaring something to be an act of war when it is not, when it suits their political agenda. And that's what we're seeing here. Although I'm a little confused about what it is about Venezuela what piece of his base is he appeasing? Who's wanting to snack on this chum? I'm not quite sure about that.
Yeah, I think Trump has several coalitions in his base that would be interested in this. Obviously, the fossil fuel industry has been chomping at the bit to get their paws on Venezuela's vast oil reserves for decades. You've also got mercenary Eric Prince, the former Blackwater guy, brother to Betsy DeVos, really is keen on leading the mercenary force into Venezuela. And right along these lines, from CNN also, Trump weighs strikes targeting cartels inside Venezuela as part of a wider pressure campaign on Maduro. I did want to move on from Venezuela and talk about another kind of off the radar, shady, probably illegal U.S. incursion into a foreign country, because this week we learned of a botched 2019 mission when U.S. Navy SEALs shot and killed several North Korean civilians during this botched mission to plant a listening device in the nuclear-armed country. And reportedly, again, this is 2019, this mission was approved by Trump's first administration. So this is SEAL Team 6, the same one that killed former al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden in 2011. They were tasked with covertly getting ashore in North Korea and planting a listening device to spy on the country's leadership. But working in the dead of night with blackout communications, a series of errors led to civilians, several North Koreans reportedly diving for shellfish, inadvertently coming across the U.S. Special Forces as they splashed ashore. The SEALs opened fire, killing all those on board a small fishing vessel, according to the New York Times, without specifying the number of casualties. Officials familiar with the mission told the Times that the U.S. soldiers, quote, pulled the bodies into the water to hide them from the North Korean authorities and punctured the boat crew's lungs with knives to make sure their bodies would sink, end quote.
Oh my
Trish.
God.
Yeah, that's incredibly illegal, and I'm shocked we're hearing about it now, and I'm frankly shocked there weren't consequences then. What say you?
Too bad this didn't come out before the Love Fest over at the China Summit. I know you're going to talk about China Summit next, but just think if Kim Jong-un had known about this when he was in the presence of these other world leaders who are aligned against us. It's just, once again, why does he do these things? Only he knows, really. And it's just stabbing the lung. I mean, it's very efficient. Stab the lungs of the people you've killed, so make sure they sink. So, no, I just wish that this story had come out before the China Summit.
Yeah, well, you'd think that Kim would have had something to say for sure. And Trish mentions the China summit, which is our next story, and I bring this up in the context of rebranding to the Department of War because I want to know, like, who is that aimed at, right? Who is this this offensive, going on offense? We're not woke or weak. We're strong and powerful. Who's that message for? Is it for these nations at this summit, like the leaders of China, North Korea, and Russia stood shoulder to shoulder on Wednesday in Beijing as high-tech military hardware and thousands of soldiers filed by? That's 2 days after Indian Prime Minister Modi and Putin were with Xi in China, smiling broadly and clasping hands at a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So, Derrick, is this a coincidence of timing, do you think? As this block of up and coming powers in opposition to the U.S. are gathered in a show of unity and strength. Is that why Trump is putting this, offensive, aggressive branding out now?
It could be. I mean, yeah, BRICS is rising fast as our economy is starting to sink. I mean, what's BRICS again? Brazil, Russia, India,
China, and
Yeah.
South Africa. But they also have increasingly in the last year or so brought on several more like affiliate members. Argentina and several African nations are sort of starting to become more aligned with this new economic bloc. Yes.
Which, I mean, it once again, it puts us at one end, the U.S. at one end, and Russia at the other end. They want the Cold War back, but our glorious leader bows down to Putin.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that's going to work, or if it's all saber rattling from Trump, and I just don't know.
I wonder, in his case, is this, hey, look, China, Russia, North Korea, India, look at us, we're offensive and strong, and look what we can do? Or is it Trump like, oh man, all you authoritarians are getting together doing strong guy stuff, me too? What is this message intended for? Potential, domestic competitor, foreign competitors, or is Trump's aggressive warlike message intended for the domestic audience? And I bring up Chicago here because just yesterday, Trump posts an image warning Chicago as the threat to deploy the Guard and ICE increases, as this threat looms, as Tracie was talking about, with all the military equipment in the region. Trump said on his stupid Truth Social site, he says, I love the smell of deportations in the morning. Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War. Helicopter emoji. The image depicts Trump in a black cavalry hat, aviator sunglasses, and military army green colored clothing. Lake Michigan and the Chicago skyline sit in the background with smoke and fire spreading, and 5 helicopters overhead. Lettering on the meme says "Chi-pocalypse Now," resembling the poster for 1979 film Apocalypse Now. Tracie, that's right in your neck of the woods. Let me have those thoughts.
So I could be in Illinois in about 10 minutes. We're getting ready. We're prepping up here. My husband and I were talking last night about, You know, when ICE, not even if, when ICE comes and the protests start, which is going to be by you know, it will be like nothing you've ever seen. Because what this is, and make no mistake, this is the occupation of a major American city that is not under any federal control. There's no excuses like he has with DC. He is occupying a major American city with federal troops. There is no charitable way to look at it. And he's doing this as retribution. We're really proud up here that Chicago, back during the first Trumpy election, Chicago was the first city to run him out of here on a rail. We're proud of that. And he hasn't forgotten. And now we're all up here making plans. If we go to the protests, do we have to contact, which parents do we contact to make sure somebody's available to take the kids in case we get swept up and arrested and disappeared into some ICE hellhole? Because that is, that's something now that we all have to think about as Americans. I think that the Department of War is absolutely intended for domestic targets, because he doesn't really care about the way the people that were at the BRICS meetings perceive him. What he really wants to do is energize his base by giving it to the libs, and this is how he's doing it.
Yeah, and you know, Chicago's not the first, right? They're practicing in DC, and you know, obviously DC has you know, special kind of rules apply as a capital district, not being its own state. But you know, I think you like to see the resistance that Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker are demonstrating, as opposed to the complicity that Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser has been showing during the week. So on Tuesday, she signed an order that formalizes cooperation with federal forces, even as residents of her city push back against the city's takeover. So this Tuesday order establishes the Safe and Beautiful Emergency Operations Center, borrowing from Trump's own branding, to institutionalize collaboration between city officials and various federal agencies, including the FBI. Now, on Wednesday, Bowser pushed back against accusations that she's willing to continue Trump's federal takeover, saying, "I want the message to be clear to the Congress. We have a framework to request or use federal resources in our city. We don't need a presidential emergency." "Let me tell you, without equivocation," she continued, "that the mayor's order does not extend the Trump emergency. In fact, it does the exact opposite. What it does is lays out a framework for how we will exit the emergency. The emergency ends on September 10th. Her executive order mandates that federal officers adhere to transparent policing practices, requiring them to avoid wearing masks, display clear agency identification, and provide proper identification during arrests and public encounters. But DC residents have criticized Bowser for opting for collaboration with the federal government over resistance. Trish, what do you think of the mayor's executive order there? She's kind of in a tough spot, huh?
Right. Yeah, she's in the same tough spot. And she's also in the same spot of so many of these municipalities whose federal funds for crime, and especially gun crimes, has been clawed back by DOJ. So here we have another episode where the Trump administration, Republicans who back them, are taking resources from municipalities that they were promised by Congress. And what a bunch of wimps not to jump in there and start slapping that around. Taking resources away from them and then putting his military in there. And it's just wrong. I think you hit the nail on the head. She's in a tough spot, but she is standing up the best she can because she's in this federal district. So, you know, we'll just see this play out on September 10th. I'm sure there will be some made up BS reason that the Trump administration will say they need to remain and maybe even arm up even a greater degree. So no, I'm sorry for her. I'm sorry for the people who live there, but she's in a tight spot.
You know who else is going to be in a tight spot, Trish? Every single American, if this guy keeps getting his way with public health in this country. So this week, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was at the center of a maelstrom Thursday as senator after senator, including those who voted to confirm him, raised pressing questions over his public health agenda. This from PBS. So, crosstalk and shouting ensued as senators, some of them doctors, demanded explanations for Kennedy's controversial actions in his first 8 months as the nation's top health official. Among them, high-profile resignations and firings at agents like the CDC, changing U.S. vaccine policy that would limit access for some Americans as the country heads into peak respiratory illness season, replacing a key panel of medical experts with hand-picked candidates and anti-vaccine stances. Undergirding the heightened scrutiny was a call for Kennedy's resignation from more than 20 medical societies and organizations, and a column from former CDC Director Susan Monarez, who wrote in the Wall Street Journal that her firing last week was part of a, quote, deliberate effort to weaken America's public health system and vaccine protections, end quote. Derek, did you catch any of the Senate hearings on Thursday?
Yes, I caught a few of them. Laughed at all the Democrats just slamming RFK Jr. and the medical people. Yeah, it's I don't know what they're going to do.
Right.
I really don't know. Oh, we have a special appearance.
Photobomb! Hey there.
Hi.
I always like to have a visitor.
Okay. Go, Bubba. Go, Bubba. He just woke up. No, where was I? That just totally threw me off.
Well, yeah. So, it's at this hearing. He got grilled by the Democrats, and he also even got grilled by Senator Bill Cassidy out of Louisiana, a Republican, a medical doctor, and the guy who put this clown over the top in his confirmation hearing, even despite doubts, as well as Senator John Barrasso from Wyoming, also a physician who voted for this clown. During these hearings, he made many false or misleading claims on the efficacy of COVID vaccines, on the availability of COVID booster shots, on how many Americans died from COVID, on blaming school shootings on antidepressants, on vaccine safety, and on rural hospitals, among mountains of other BS to come out of Kennedy's mouth this week. Derek, did you find any of his lies particularly galling?
So, like I was telling talking to my wife the other day, her mother, rest her soul, was born deaf. She was born deaf because her mother, Grandma June, got rubella when she was pregnant with her. This is before the time of the MMR vaccine. So if those vaccines were 30 years earlier, then my mother-in-law would have been able to hear. So vaccines work. You don't see that many kids with chickenpox anymore. It's because of the chickenpox vaccine. That didn't exist when any of us were kids. And we all had to, deal with chickenpox, have chickenpox parties, if your parents were so apt to them. So
yeah.
yeah, it's just the goal of this guy to claim these things. It's like, how far has the Kennedy clan fallen?
Yeah. Well, the rest of the remaining Kennedy clan wants to be as far away from this guy as humanly possible, I think. You know what? So for all of the galling lies he told during his Senate hearing on Thursday, there are more galling lies coming down the pipe, apparently, because, according to Reuters, Kennedy plans to announce soon that the use of Tylenol in pregnant women is potentially linked to autism, contrary to medical guidelines that say it is safe to use. This comes from the Wall Street Journal on Friday, citing people familiar with the matter. In the report, Kennedy will also suggest a medicine derived from folate called folinic acid can be used to treat symptoms of autism in some people. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration and leading medical organizations agree on the safety of acetaminophen, its use during pregnancy, and the information provided on the label. That's from the company Kenvue, who makes the brand name Tylenol. Tracie, anything on that?
I remember hearing the theory about Tylenol and autism a few years ago when I was invited to be part of a class action lawsuit. And it was as scammy then as it is now. What is next with him? I mean, are we going back to leeches? The thing that I really have to gather my thoughts on, because this is a parent, it actually scares the shit out of me. The way he continually is targeting autism and people with mental health issues and any neurodivergence. Because soon MAGAs are going to need a new target. Eventually, they're going to run out of ammunition, or basically just going to run out of people to deport at this rate. And so then they're going to be turning next to our kids. And, I don't know the current rates of autism in the United States, but having raised two autistic kids and knowing the community, there's a lot of them. And this talk where he is committed to bringing people in and taking your kids and bringing them into a camp, which he said out loud. I mean, this is where next? Where is he going to go next, and what is he going to take next?
Well, so it might not be Kennedy himself, but we can kind of see where this movement is headed if you look at what happened in Florida this week, where their state surgeon general, Joseph Ladapo, said on Wednesday that the state will work to eliminate all vaccine mandates, a move that drew condemnation from public health experts. This from NBC News. All of them, Ladapo said during a news conference as the crowd stood and erupted in balance. Ladapo said during a news conference as the crowd stood and erupted in applause. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery, he said, and also stated that the Florida Department of Health will work in partnership with the governor. Ladapo has previously railed against vaccines in Florida, saying that people under 65 shouldn't get the mRNA COVID vaccine, which contradicted, guidance from the CDC at the time. And during a 2024 measles outbreak in the state, he said that parents should watch for measles symptoms, but could make their own decision about whether to send children to school. He did not encourage vaccination. His announcement came as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis revealed the establishment of the Florida Make Healthy. Sorry, let me try that one more time. The Florida Make America Healthy Again Commission, which will recommend state-level integration of President Donald Trump and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s MAHA effort. Trish, this guy, under no circumstances, should be a state surgeon general, should he?
My favorite, and I'm gonna give credit to Stephen Colbert on this. And then, guys, I'm sorry, I have to leave, but I will say this: that during this statement, when the Surgeon General is spouting all this stuff, says, "And who am I to tell a family or tell an individual what they put into their bodies?" And Stephen Colbert said, "You're a doctor. That's your job. Your job is to tell people what to put into their bodies and what not to put in their bodies." And so there you go. And one other thing, and he invoked God, that God would, be there to help you make your decision about what you're going to do with your family medical conditions. I'm sorry, I can't go with this. So I love you all, but I have to go. So thanks for the chance to speak my mind, and I'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Trish. We appreciate you being here with us this weekend, and appreciate your contributions. As always, the great Trish Whitcomb, ladies and gentlemen.
Bye. Thanks.
All right. So,
real quick,
running long here, as we are prone to do, and I had to let Trish go. Hope I get to keep you guys for a little bit longer, at least finish out our national stories this week here. That guy is scary, and let me tell you, I think Ladapo makes Kennedy seem sane by comparison, and that is quite a stretch. Let's move on to this week in the Epstein saga. The story that won't go away, the story that stays in the news despite every Trump effort to bury this thing. This week, the House Oversight Committee released more than 33,000 pages of Epstein-related files, including court documents, flight records, and a video of Epstein's cell block from before his death that includes a minute missing from earlier videos. However, most of these documents were already in the public domain. The following day, however, a group of Epstein accusers put pressure on Congress to release all of the files on Wednesday at a press conference organized by Republican Representative Thomas Massie and Democratic Representative Ro Khanna. The group of accusers told emotional, gut-wrenching stories of abuse at the hands of Epstein and his co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, and raised pressure on lawmakers to back the release of all of the files in the Justice Department's years-long investigation. So, the Khanna and Massie are pushing a discharge petition around the House of Representatives, and they need 218 signatures, that's, a majority of members of the House, to force a vote to compel the Justice Department to release all of the Epstein files. Now, the White House framed voting for this discharge petition as a hostile act toward the Trump administration. The accusers, meanwhile, said that if Congress isn't willing to release all of the investigative documents pertaining to Epstein, that they would compile their own list of names to hold those in Epstein's orbit accountable. Together as survivors, we will confidently compile the names we all know who were regularly in the Epstein world, said Lisa Phillips, who said she was brought to Epstein's island. Derrick, so first of all, your thoughts on this discharge petition. None of the Indiana Republicans have signed on to this thing so far, including Victoria Spartz, who was at this press conference, I understand, as was Nancy Mace, Marjorie Taylor Greene, some of your far right, like Whack-a-Bird Republicans, are on board with releasing these files. Why can't Indiana representatives like Jim Baird or Mark Messmer or Jefferson Shreve get behind this demand for transparency?
Because they have suckled at the teat of MAGA for so long that they're afraid to step out of line when it comes to, even if it's basic human decency, they lack it.
Tracie, now maybe I'm cynical, but like if I'm like, say, a Jefferson Shreve or an Aaron Houchin, somebody who would say that, you know, they're a reasonable Republican, right? Like Shreve especially, I don't think he ever claimed to be a MAGA guy. If you wanted the MAGA thing gone so you could be yourself, wouldn't this Epstein bombshell and getting Trump run out on a rail benefit you in the long run?
Absolutely. It's, you know, I wish that something, and again, not to slight the victims, Epstein's victims, it's appalling, but I wish that a broader range of issues would spark non-MAGA Republicans to stand up to Trump. You know, assaults on our democracy,
Yeah,
concentration camps in our states. Like, you know, there's a million things that I wish that would have twigged them. But if this is it, go. What are you waiting for? It's your chance. Take it and run.
Seriously, you know, and for all of this, obvious cover up, right? Trump said, I want to say it was on Thursday this week, in a lengthy True Social post, that the Justice Department had done its job in releasing the Epstein documents, and that Democrats knew everything there was to know about Epstein, but now, years after his death, they, out of nowhere, are seeming to show such love and heartfelt concern for his victims. Does anybody really believe that? It's time to end Democrat Epstein hoax and give Republicans credit for the great, even legendary job that they are doing. They obviously have not, Derrick, right? They have not done their job.
No, they haven't. They need to release all the files unredacted unless it deals with national security, which I highly doubt that it does, or ongoing criminal court cases. Release them. We all know whose names are on there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even some of our, you know, Democratic heroes' names are on there. We just want the list. We want to help start the healing for the victims. And, you know, charge who we can for any of these crimes.
We want the truth, no matter what, because we are not in a cult like Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who had perhaps the most ridiculous Trump excuse I've seen to date, saying on during remarks Friday that Trump is so Trump referred to this thing as a Democrat hoax, right? Trump says the Epstein case is a Democrat hoax. Well, Johnson says, well, no. He's referring to the hoax that Democrats are using it to try to attack him. It's been misrepresented. He's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. when he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. And this is the best part right here. He went on to say, he was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down.
Bullshit.
The president knows.
Wait, what?
Sympathy for the women who suffered these unspeakable harms. It's detestable to him. Mike Johnson is basically peddling the QAnon conspiracy theory, saying that, well, if Trump knew anything about the Epstein case, it's because he was working undercover to try and break into the sex trafficking ring and expose it.
Yeah. I don't really get the sense that Donald Trump has the personality characteristics or skill set that would make him a valuable FBI asset. An informant.
Right?
He
He has the personality and type that it makes him a good KGB asset.
Perhaps, but no. Yeah.
There have been so many memes the last couple days talking about who else was a FBI informant in some various ridiculous scenarios, which I encourage folks to go online and find. But I do want to move to our last story in the national and international news section this week from NBC News. The judiciary is pushing back on Trump's expanding power. So this week, judges have issued orders blocking the president's use of the Wartime Alien Enemies Act to speed deportations, the federal deployment of the National Guard for law enforcement purposes in California, the freezing of $2 billion in federal funds to Harvard, and the termination of protected legal status for hundreds of thousands of Haitians and Venezuelans. This article goes on to say it was the worst week in the courts in months for President Donald Trump and his administration, and came after another major loss last week when an appeals court struck down some of his tariffs. Trump is already appealing that ruling to the Supreme Court and has said it would be a disaster if it's not overturned. To date, the High Court has granted the Trump administration's emergency requests in 17 of 22 cases. The courts aren't going to strike down all that they're doing, and at the end of the day, they'll end up accomplishing more by flooding the zone, a lawyer who is close to the White House said in May in reference to the administration's strategy. Tracie, is the judiciary holding?
It seems like it, and thank God, because somebody has to. It feels like, obviously the Supreme Court aside, the only principled members of the American political system left are the judiciary, or at least the only ones that have the ability to try to pry even the slightest check. But we just have to see where it goes from here, because all this shit's going to end up right at the Supreme Court, and they haven't really shown much appetite for letting him do anything but take over the United States and rename it Trumplandia. So I guess we're just going to have to see what happens.
Yeah, well, it's holding, but it's holding like a greasy paper bag full of takeout, and you're really just hoping to get it home on time.
Mm-hmm.
Derrick, I mean, even if the judiciary rules against Trump in every case, even if his hand-picked, stolen Supreme Court disagrees with him, in every case, who's going to enforce these decisions? Are they just going to do what they want anyway?
That's how it looks. Yeah, that's how it exactly looks. I mean, didn't the Supreme Court rule that no lower court can put a nationwide injunction on anything that Trump does?
Yeah, I believe they did say that.
Yeah, so Trump,
and yet they continue to, by the way, and sometimes they, are abided by, and sometimes they're not. I mean, they're always immediately appealed. But yeah, I mean, the Congress doesn't have an army. The Supreme Court doesn't have the army. And if the executive branch decides they're going to do the thing, they can do the thing. And I think generally, that's what we've all been worried about for the last 10 years. That's the mark of authoritarianism, is make me, right? And, is John Roberts going to make Trump fall in line? Can he make Trump fall in line? And I think that's the real worry for all of us, Tracie. Yeah.
Yes, that's the question. What happens? And I think that's part of the reason why the Supreme Court has been so accommodating. And because I think they are just as afraid as the rest of us that if they tried to put a stop to him, he would just ignore their orders. And then we really are where we've been afraid we'd be for all these years in an authoritarian state.
They're doing the thing that Timothy Snyder, fascism scholar, says specifically not to do. They're obeying in advance. They're rolling over so they don't have to say no. They're concerned about the appearances of the judiciary holding. So if they don't give him an order, if they don't give him a decision that he would want to disobey, then he doesn't have to disobey. Listen, a lot of problems with the founding fathers, a lot of big loopholes in our Constitution you can drive a semi-truck through, but for all of their short-sightedness 250 years ago, I don't think they ever envisioned this. So listen, we're coming up on 2.5 hours here now. We haven't gotten to our one big thing. It's 2 weeks in a row. There's too much news. Stop, news, please. Quit giving us such a fire hose every week. There are big issues we'd like to discuss. But I'm not going to keep you guys all afternoon. We got football starting here in 10 minutes. I do want to give you folks an opportunity, though, to shamelessly plug yourselves before we take off for the week. Derrick, I'm going to start with you. Where can the good folks find you?
Find me on Facebook, Instagram at The People's Fourth. Find me online at DerrickHolder.com. And that's it.
And Tracie, where can folks check out your Bluer by the Lake podcast, and where else can they find you?
You can find us on Substack, bluerbythelake.substack.com. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all the places. And I do want to do a super fast plug to let people know if all these things that we've been talking about today are terrifying to you and you want to do something. Next week is National Voter Registration Day. Anybody can register somebody to vote in the state of Indiana. Go to Rock the Vote to figure out how to do that. And I'll also have an episode about with tips and tricks on how to do that on the podcast dropping later this week.
Fantastic. I also will be talking voter registration and voting in general with Blythe Potter soon. She's running for Secretary of State this week on the Who's Left podcast. My guest is congressional candidate Brad Meyer down here in Indiana's 9th. Subscribe to that at whosleft.us or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on the social medias there. Also, again, be sure to subscribe to Project Next on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you get your live streaming content. Be sure to check us out there. We will be back next Sunday, hopefully with a lot less big news so we can talk about our one big thing. But until that time, I will see you later. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers, and this has been Who's Left This Week. Love each other, Indiana.